Welcome to the Boss Podcast, the best of sales skills. This week we have Chandell Labbozzetta back to talk about closing techniques and closing strategies. Of course, Chandell has authored a terrific book which is called Confident Closing. So Chandell is well placed to talk about closing more confidently. Today, we're going to cover off 4 closing techniques that you can use to help your sales momentum and keep it alive, as well as what you need to do before to make sure you have actually earned the right to ask for the order in the first place. Before we jump into this episode, Chandell has offered each of you an audio copy of Confident Closing for free. All you need to do is scroll down to the show notes and simply follow those links to pick up your own copy. Now, let's talk about confident closing with Chandell. Chandell, welcome back to the Boss Podcast.
Super excited to be here. Thanks, Mark. Thanks so much for having me back.
Well, you know, it's our most popular guest come back for a second time. You're only the 3rd person, I think, to come back a second time. So
Yeah.
There you go. Well done to you.
Thank you. Well, what a pleasure. We had such a lovely time and a great chat last time. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, we really did. So, and if those of you who are listening haven't heard Chandell's previous podcast, make sure you go and check that out. That's in the back catalogue, and that's really easy to see. And you can just search for Chandell Labbozzetta, and you'll find her name in the title. So that's easy to grab. So, Chandell, again, thanks for coming on. Today we're going to talk about something else, and we're going to be talking about closing. And of course, the reason why we're doing this is you've written a great book, Confident Closing, which I've read, and you can tell by the dog-eared nature of the book. It's a great book. I really like it. It covers a whole angle of selling. It's really valuable for a lot of people. So, but today we're going to be talking about closing. Before we get into that, I just want to agitate you a little bit. 2022, it doesn't feel like, closing is a sales strategy that a lot of people really need to be doing it. It feels like we've moved towards authentic selling, that sort of stuff. So Chandell, why should we be focusing on closing in today's sales environment?
Well, look, just for a second here, I think it's really important that we define closing, because I think when people think about closing, they're thinking about the fact that we're hard-nosed sales tactics, really pushing people into, buy or die kind of, and that's definitely not what we've got in mind here. None of this manipulative sales stuff that, a lot of people have these ideas when they think of closing. And you, as you read the book, you probably saw in the foreword that originally I wanted to call the book Feeding Salt to Horses. And that's, that premise of the fact that, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But if you feed it salt, it'll be thirsty and it'll drink because it's thirsty and it wants to, not because it's been forced or drowned in the water. And I think, when I talk about confident closing, that's really about what we're leading people to do, to make those decisions where it's just a no-brainer to say yes, and how do we do that? So
yeah, look, I think that's really super important today. So nobody really wants to be manipulating or creating a situation where people are buying something that they don't want to buy.
No, definitely not. And then you get remorse. So, it often doesn't work out how you think it would anyway, even if people are trying to force people into buying.
Yeah. So, but what I do see is, so let's call this, maybe even conversion, so if we're converting people into sales, salespeople really struggle with that last hurdle, don't they? So they really do feel challenged about, how do I get Chandell to agree to move forward? How do I get Chandell to agree to take the ultimate next step, which is sign the document, transfer the money, make the agreement, whatever it is for each individual. So, what are some of the things that we need to do in order to try and set ourselves up to be good at this conversion piece?
Yeah, look, I think it's a really great question, Mark, because you see a lot of the time when I talk with people when they first approach me, they're kind of looking for either that last step where they actually want to get people across the line and take that step where they actually, take action. And in most cases, a lot of the time they haven't set themselves up for that to happen. And so in the book Confident Closing, we talk about, the mindset and the element of, how you show up as a sales professional and the way that you engage. But more importantly, do you have a process that you follow where you're, actively engaging with the customer, doing a proper needs analysis, not just from what can my product do, but also, what holistically is going on for the client? What do they need? How do you educate them and inform them? And if you do those things right, then often what the result of that will be is that Objections don't come up as part of the asking process because you've answered all of those objections as part of the pitch. And then it's just a no-brainer solution to actually go to that next step. And so while I believe that, there are different closing tactics, which of course we can cover off today if you'd like to explore a few of them, I think that one of the most important things for our listeners to think about is that, artful salespeople, when they do it right in terms of setting up the sale, the close really becomes a transition of just kind of like, well, in most cases, certainly in my own experience and my clients' experience, when they follow a certain framework to set up the sale, often it's the client coming and saying, well, what's the next step? How do we get involved in this? And so, you don't actually need a specific closing tactic if you do it really well.
Yeah, so 100% agree. So that, the more work that you've done on the front half of that sales process, it makes it significantly easier. The more work you do on the front half, earning the money, it's easier to collect the money on the back half.
100%. What a great way to express it too.
So I'm 100% aligned with that. I think that's fantastic. And like a lot of things in sales, salespeople often look for tactics or techniques to do something right in that step of the process. But what's really happening now is a result of what you did or didn't do 1, 2, 3 steps earlier.
Exactly.
Right? So if you haven't built enough rapport and credibility, right, or trust, so I think rapport and credibility equals trust, right? Mm-hmm. So if you haven't built enough rapport and credibility, then it's going to be much harder for them to sign the document or give their agreement to you, right? So if you've moved too fast, and that's just one example. If you haven't done enough questioning,
yes.
If you haven't really figured out what it is that they're trying to achieve, then when you do your pitch, maybe you're going to miss those important pieces. And then therefore we find it hard to move forward on the closing technique. But people ring me up and say, hey, Mark, I'm having this trouble with this deal. I need some closing techniques. Yes. But when I dig a bit deeper, it's like, actually, you don't need closing techniques. You just need to be better at building rapport. You need to be better at questioning.
Yes. Questioning, exactly. Yeah, finding the need that's actually going on. Exactly. And look, I'm sure familiar, we have a methodology of the 5 steps to sales success, build trust and rapport, ask the right questions. And I often say that the quality of your questions will determine the quality of your result. Find the need, build the need, and then of course close. And when doing all of those things right, often objections don't come up. And if they do, then they're answered through education and through really understanding the deeper skepticism of the client or the hesitation. I mean, people genuinely, if we think about our buyers and our prospects and clients, people just want to feel safe that the investment that they're making is going to deliver the thing that's going to solve the pain, and that they're not going to be jibbed in the process.
Yep. Okay, so I think that we've covered that off, but I think what we should do is maybe just walk through your 5 key points, because that'll provide the framework for us to then go into the closing techniques. And if you are listening, we will provide you with some techniques for you to use if you're in that situation. So what were those 5 again, Chandell?
Yeah, so the first step is obviously to build trust or to build rapport. I don't know if you feel the same, but sometimes I hear the word rapport and I think it's been a bit overused in terms of, yes, we've got matching and mirroring, but really what it's about is about creating a deep sense of trust. Resistance is shallow and acceptance is deep. And so, if we can build that little bit of trust, build that rapport, get people comfortable to be able to share their situation. And we can do that through a range of different things by, finding associations, finding common ground, matching and mirroring, through, what we know about their history, which then leads to point number 2, which is about, asking questions. And so, I think good quality open-ended questions that are not leading questions will obviously and more frequently give you the information that you really need where the client's selling themselves. Whereas I think, I've seen so many sales teams, don't get me wrong, I think that there's relevance in having kind of like scripted questions so you don't miss anything. But at the same time, leaving the questions open enough that the person can then explain their situation rather than giving you a yes or no response, which then kind of limits the conversation to, well, this is all you really asked me. So, really good quality questions that allow you to explore the client's situation or the prospect's situation.
Yep. And I think we see a lot of those mistakes in the qualification piece. So
absolutely.
BANT, for example. Oh, I've got to ask you, do you have a budget?
Yeah.
And it just seems like it's a box ticking exercise. It's not a questioning strategy.
And no, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And, I cringe when I hear that word because, any intelligent person is not going to tell you really what they're going to be spending. Everybody's always looking to get an effective deal. So it's kind of a moot point. So, I like to find out on that point, as a little sideline, I like to find out what's the value of their top value client, or what's the, what kind of revenue does their top value client spend with them in a year? And it gives you an idea of kind of like how you can create contrast frames between, if you don't do this solution, then what's the potential losses or the opportunity cost? And so, being intelligent about your questioning, not asking questions that are, somewhat obvious and what you won't get an honest response to.
So I think we got as far as 2, didn't we? Rapport,
yes,
building, questioning. What's 3, 4, and 5 for us?
So one more key point on the questioning. Often people ask questions for the sake of asking questions. So one other thing that I'll add in that is, when you're asking questions, team, please ask the question and zip your mouth and use the 2 ears. Yeah. Your client, your prospect will actually reveal a lot of their buying strategy when they're conversing with you in the answers to the question. So, a lot of data is being collated here. Take lots of notes. And then of course we're finding the need here where we find, well, what is their real need? And sometimes the surface need is very obvious to us, but beneath that, there is the emotional impact of the problems or the challenges that they're experiencing. And if you caught the last podcast, we talked a little bit about the subconscious mind and how people will buy emotionally and then justified, logically. So this is the time when you're actually finding out the impact of the problem that you're looking to serve with. And I think that's a really key point in terms of identifying the need and cross-checking with the person to say, so what you're saying is this is the problem. And then we move into where we build the need. And so by testing and measuring that with the prospect and saying, so if we could do this together, then that would mean this for you, or what would it mean to you? So really building that need in their own mind. And then of course, moving into the close where, one of the biggest things that I find for some novice salespeople is they do all this work at the front end of the sale and then they don't actually ask for the sale. So it's an important part to just actually ask.
I 100% agree. I see it all the time. And when I listen to phone calls, and I say, oh, where did you, go, oh, no, I asked twice. And then you play it back and there is no ask.
No, that's right. And that's the assumption that a lot of people make. They think, oh, well, I've said all of this stuff, so clearly, the person's ready to move forward, but it's not always obvious to them. And sometimes the hesitation in asking can do with itty bitty shitty committee around, pricing, or they think that the person won't want to pay, or they get hesitant about asking or revealing pricing strategies. So really important that we actually give the person the option to actually opt in by asking them, hey, would you like to do some business together?
Yeah, I think that, look, and I love the way you talked about pricing confidence and how our own approach to money impacts that. I think a lot of people miss that. I thought that was really gold in the book.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the example that I used in the book was a lady who I was genuinely interested in investing in some services. And I won't give the whole story now, but basically I kind of asked her about how we move forward. And over 15, 20 minutes, she avoided talking about the actual investment. And I was really ready to buy. And her lack of ability to tell me the pricing really made me lose confidence in the recommendations that I'd had that she was a great service offering. So, we can undo ourselves if we bring, our money decisions into those sales conversations.
Yep. And I think 2022 with capacity constraints around how much we can actually have to sell for a lot of organizations, price discounting or discounting in sales is going to be a real challenge for a lot of businesses.
Yeah. And I think getting ahead of that psychology is really, really important for reasons you just mentioned, 100%.
Yep. So I think that's our process.
Yes, that is our process.
So we've done that and we're like, okay, I'm not confident in asking. What are some techniques or strategies that I could use, Chandell, to get somebody to say yes to my offering? Let's say I've done all those other things that we just talked about and I've done them right. Where do I go? What are some techniques we could use?
Yeah, look, I think, the very simple thing that sort of encompasses, I'm going to share 4 different types of closing strategies with everybody today. And I think that, if I could put a caveat on all of them, is that, it's really important that we actually ask. And so, we just talked about the importance of asking and presenting a clear offering for people, make it easy to understand, tell people how to engage. And so, the first one that I want to share with you in terms of a tactic itself is what we call an assumptive close. And so, this is where, you've educated, you've informed, you've had a great conversation, you've got great rapport, and you say, look, with everything that we've kind of gone through, it seems like this would be a really good fit. So are you ready to get started, or would you like me to prepare the paperwork? Or, we've got some availability to get you started and onboarded within the next couple of weeks, what would work for you? And so we're kind of assuming the sale already and putting someone in that position where it's like we're ready to move through to the next steps. And look, I'll put a little warning sign on this, that if rapport is low or you haven't built the rapport to the level that you'd want, the assumptive close can sometimes come across as being a little abrasive, right? Like you haven't actually asked a question. So really important when you're using the assumptive close and you're sort of assuming the sale, that it's already moving forward. And, you could do this by, proposing dates in the diary to get started. You could do it by, presenting a contract or a credit application, regardless of, what your process is. You could just assume the sale as if, it's clear we're moving forward. So just make sure you have lots of rapport and that you're in the right place.
And full transparency, this one is my favorite to use in my own consulting business. So obviously the next step when people agree is putting a date in the diary, right, for the first training session. So instead of saying, do you want to go ahead, I just say, well, what's the best day for us to do the first session? 100%. So you just jump straight to the next step, the next conversation, the next question that you would need to ask if they'd agreed to go ahead. Yes. And if they go, oh, well, let's do it on, March the 23rd.
We're ready to go.
There's nothing else to ask.
I'll just throw something in here about the assumptive close, because Mark, I don't think it's just in the end of the sales process. I think that we can do an assumptive close at each step of the sales cycle. So if you're making an appointment with somebody, it's that, that alternative choice question of, so, is next week or the week after a better time for us to meet for that appointment? Or, you can use the assumptive close at each stage of the sales cycle.
Yep. That's it. Yeah. So an alternative close in the assumptive piece. I like it.
In the assumptive piece, exactly. Bringing it all together with all the jargon.
Yeah. Well, I think all these things have got 15 different names each, right? So
100%. Just depends who you were learning it from or reading about it with.
Correct. Okay. So what else have we got? What's next?
So the second closing tactic is a little bit harsher. We call it the sharp angle close or the direct close, and this is where we just actually sort of say, so are you ready now to do business? Based on all of the things that we've talked about, it's really important that you solve these things, and these are the consequences. So we really needed to get this done yesterday. When's a good time for us to get this started this afternoon? And so it's much more direct. It's actually assuming a little bit more authority in that piece, and really pushing the client to take action right away. Again, very important to have rapport in this process. And sometimes it is actually about this technique, and the fourth one that I'll share with you, the challenger close, actually have a lot of similarities. And so I'll unpack it a little further when we get to the challenger close. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. So how did that sound? That was, look, based on everything that we've talked about so far.
Yeah, this is the cost of you not doing this. So, whether it's with me today or whether it's with somebody else, you need to take action on this, and we must do it now. So, and really painting out the consequences of that, and being quite direct about the impacts if it's not going to happen.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Next up.
Yeah, so our next one is our consultative or our trusted advisor. And so I think that sometimes what can happen, and this is probably something that a lot of people are going to see in 2022, with hesitations in the marketplace, people getting back on their feet, but also not having confidence around timings of different things. This is where we get the soft rejection, and someone sort of saying, well, I'm not ready right now, but I'm really loving what you're doing. And so I think that the consultative sale is very much about assuming an understanding of everything that's going on for that person and making recommendations. And so what this does is it builds reciprocity. And so it may not be a close for you right now for your product or service, but if those of you that may have heard of The Trusted Advisor, it's a great book. The author escapes me right now, but perhaps we can put it in the show notes. When you move in and you actually help people with the challenges that are impacting their ability to engage, and you actually, through your questioning technique, have found out more around the challenges that surround, their situation, you may, by referral say, look, you said that you are having some challenges with this particular area of your business. We don't do that sort of thing, but we know that by you solving that, then you'll be more ready and more willing for our solution to come in. I want to introduce you to this partner that we work with who can really help with that at the moment. And so it's actually assuming kind of this trusted advisor, building that authority, and it actually often builds the relationship to the point where someone will say, well, if they're actually, it overcomes that bias of this person's just telling me what I want to hear because they want to sell their stuff. And usually a delay of, oh, we can't do it until next year, or we need to wait a few months, turns into, hey, that was really helpful that you introduced me to that person, and I was thinking about the timing and we probably should do it now. So it's actually building the authority without actually presenting your things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it certainly does. And the book was written by David Meister.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's not a difficult read. It's dry. It's an old school sales book. It's pretty dry going. Yeah.
The premise, I think, is still very relevant because a lot of the time, that deep sense of relationship and that reciprocity that's built by, well, I don't know if you see this too, Mark. I imagine that you do, that there are some salespeople that perhaps if they can't get business out of the prospect that's in front of them now, they kind of drop it and think, oh, well, I'm going to abandon that because there's nothing in it for me right now. Whereas I think that whole process of actually, there are going to be some ready to buy now buyers, and there are going to be people that are, they'll buy within the next, say, 6 to 18 months of engaging with you. So it's always important to continue to nurture those.
Yeah, and I think we said it at the start, but like this is almost like the slow down to speed up thing, right? So if you take the pressure off the sale and go, you know what, doesn't sound like you're ready, you've got to get a CRM in place before I can help you with the, your marketing, for example. Would you like me to tie you in with somebody from a XYZ CRM company? The trust level, like I say, goes up because you're slowing down the sale, and the prospect says, well, hang on a second, if they're not rushing to tie me into a contract, maybe, they do have my
best interest at heart.
Best interest at heart. Absolutely. Yeah. Well done. Okay. So challenger sale. So what? Challenger close.
Challenger close, yeah. So the challenger close and the process of the challenger close is one that I really like. It's certainly in my preference around the way in which we really build rapport with people, and it kind of ties in a little bit to the trusted advisor and the mentality of that. So there was a fantastic book written by Brent Adamson and Matthew Dixon called The Challenger Sale, and it was a longitudinal study that they did, and they identified 5 different profiles of styles of closing. And we had the relationship salesperson, the wolf salesperson, we had the relationship salesperson, the wolf salesperson, the problem solver, and then of course we had the challenger sale. And so,
correct,
what they identified was that these people were successful at different times over different, economic situations. And what they learned was the challenger sale was the most successful across all different economic climates. And I think this is really pertinent based on what's going on in our environment and our world today, because we've got all these objections and these obstacles. And so what the idea here is that the challenger sale is willing and confident enough to challenge the client's methodology or their thinking based on what's good for them. So it's, we're not talking about going in and arguing with your clients for the sake of having an argument with them.
Good point.
But it's the willingness to actually say, look, Mr. Client, you said that X, Y, and Z was important to you. And so, when you think that you need this solution, which from my perspective, it'll deliver you only 50% of the outcome that you're looking for. What you really haven't thought of yet, and what I want to bring to your attention is, A, B, C over here. And so by doing this, we can actually get you, 100% of the solution rather than 50%. And so I know that you called me in to look at this, but actually what you're not noticing, because what we do know about human psychology is people think that they know what they need. And often when we dig a bit deeper, we find that the solution that they think that they needed is actually something different from what's actually going to help. And so I think that confidence, and this comes back to the mindset, which I talk about consistently in the book, is that you need to be certain within yourself and have the authority within yourself to be able to challenge the client for their best interests. And like the trusted advisor, people will often respect the fact that you're not just coming in there to be an order taker, that you're actually willing to challenge them for what's best for their outcomes. And one of the questions that I like to ask as part of this challenger sale mentality and the challenger close mentality is to actually say, on a scale of 1 to 10, if 1 were not at all and 10 was really, 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 I'm totally ready, considering time, energy, resources, and investment, how ready are you to actually make changes on this? Or how ready are you to actually fix this situation? And as a general rule, if people answer less than 7 for me, in my own personal sales process, if people answer less than 7, I'm reluctant to bring them on board because they're not enthusiastic enough. The timing's not right. I'm probably going to get objections where they say, well, it sounds like a great solution, but I'm not ready right now. So, if someone answers more than 7 out of 10, then it's obviously important to them. And it gives me the opportunity to go back and to challenge them in the close and say, Mr. Client, you said that 7 or your score was 8 in terms of your urgency, your enthusiasm to do this. What's actually holding you back? Because based on what you said, this was really, really important. So it's challenging them for their own benefit.
Yep. Okay. So I love that. I think that works really well. One of the things that I've done or have taught that's along the same lines, but slightly different, and if it's okay, I'd love to share.
Yeah,
and that is you tie your discovery questions. So when you find out exactly what the pain point is, you say something like, "Look, what I want to do is I want to help you," and then insert whatever overcome the problem. Yeah. So I want to help you increase your revenue. So that gives you just that type of language that I want to help you close can help you then challenge that client. So this is kind of like a challenger strategy. So it fits in with that, but it's just the language to help you start that conversation without being too aggressive. Yes. So Chandell, you told me that, increasing your revenue from X to Y was really important to you in 2022. I want to help you do that. In order for me to do that, I think we need to not look at this, but instead we should be looking at that. Is it okay if we can move our focus on that? So, it's a great way to challenge them, but by getting permission at the same time.
Absolutely.
Because I know a lot of salespeople are worried that if they challenge their clients too heavily, that they'll
lose them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So hopefully, we've sort of combined a couple of things there, but hopefully people will be able to use that with a bit of confidence. It really works well.
Excellent.
Okay. All right. So a couple of really good techniques there that I think people will be able to use. And we're not suggesting you should use all of them at once.
Oh, please don't do that. No, it'll be overwhelming.
So, and this is a great thing about closing techniques, and I think it's lost on people, is you don't need to be an expert at all of them. Just find one that really sits comfortable with your personality, your style, and your business. So, for example, for me, when I'm booking training, that assumptive close is just very natural because the next thing they need to do is book a meeting. So, put some time in the diary for the training. So that's my go-to, right? Just to help it make it easy for people to agree so that they don't have to feel like they're under a lot of pressure, and to make it easy for me to transition from where I am to the next step.
100%. So, and on that too, I think you made a really important point there, Mark, that I'd like to emphasize for the listeners is that, make people feel comfortable about the process that you're going to take them through to engage. Sometimes people are keen to get going, but they don't know what the next steps are or what they need to do. And so really outlining your process so that people can feel safe and comfortable that this is where we're going next. And that's really part of that assumptive thing. So
very cool. All right. So Chandell, if people are thinking about closing, what's the one message you would give them in relation to confident closing?
Look, the one message I think is about, being confident within yourself and imagining yourself leaving the situation with that next step closed, so it's that mindset element. And when you've got that really solidly, then you're going to ask, then you're going to present, then you're going to, really do all of those steps. Whereas I think that hesitation in terms of, I don't want to ask, or I'll see if they're up for it, or see how the meeting goes. And then I'll kind of, translate what I need to do. It's just being in that sense of confidence and just ask whichever technique that you find, which is most comfortable to you and your business. Like you said, Mark, make sure that you're including that in the sales process. Otherwise, you do all that work and then at the last 1%, you let it slide.
Yep. I agree. It happens to a lot of people, I think. So, Chandell, people have been listening to this. They love it. How can they get more of you? What's the best way to interact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we'd love to see you over in, we have actually a free closed Facebook group where I do a lot of little snippets and things like that. So you can find it at us at the NLP Sales Mastery Academy on Facebook. And I'd love to just give a gift to the audience as well. If you'd like to get more clarity around how you can be more confident in that process in assuming the sale, we have our elevator pitch tool around refining your elevator pitch, which will help you to think about some of those things in that closing strategy. So just want to give that as a gift to the audience today if they want to work through that and get more confident in those closing strategies.
Okay, an audience, you can just grab that straight in the show notes. So those links will be in the show notes. So no matter what platform you're on, you just scroll down, click link, and go and grab that elevator pitch tool. That's awesome. Chandell, thanks for coming on the Boss Podcast for a second time. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Mark, it was awesome to spend some time with you. And thanks to everybody for listening in. Really great to see you.
Thanks again.